5. Here we go, guys. This is it. This is it. Metagame snapshot. Yeah. Who cares? Card updates. Twisted Fate. They actually did it. They actually did it. This guy was actually right. There was someone in chat. Oh my god. And that's the alarm. Sorry about that. There was someone in chat saying that it would go to 9. Hang on. They must have nerfed the other cards in other ways. They must have nerfed the other cards in other ways, guys. This is fine. I'll actually read the descriptions later. I need to just look through. Fiora loses 1 health. Fiora loses 1 health. This is a big nerf. I'm actually totally fine with this. Like I mentioned before, as I mentioned like, 10 minutes ago, I think Fiora is kind of like at a point in the community where like a lot of people are fine seeing less of her right now. This is a big nerf. Like the mono Fiora decks like will be able to be like fringe anti-meta decks. This one definitely hits like decks like Fiora, Shen. They will definitely feel this nerf. Jarvan gets +1/+1. He goes from a 5-3 to a 6-4. Okay, that's pretty big. That's pretty big. This is actually a hard one to evaluate because I don't know 100% if Jarvan will actually be able, if this will be enough. Jarvan felt like he had problems leveling up, and he always had an awkwardness built into his ability with like not being able to choose when to use it and like not really being able to like feel good about playing him manually. This is a big buff, +1/+1, but I'm not sure if it'll be enough in his case. This is a hard one to revisit. Shyvana added Fury base. Wait. 4/4. Wait, she's a 3/4 again. Wait. Wait a second. Hang on. Wait a second. Why is Shyvana at 3/4 again? All right. I will say. So some of you guys in chat are pointing out like Shyvana gets nerfed overall. This is probably not like a nerf overall. It's like, I mean, it's basically the same. So she has Fury. Like Fury, in some cases, I think probably more often than not, it'll be a bit better than the +1 attack. But it's like, it's a side grade more than anything else. I mean, it's not even unfair if you want to call it a nerf. Like Shyvana's basically not going anywhere. I really don't think they needed to remove the 1 stat here. Like she could have easily been Fury 4/4. Lulu, okay, base stats goes to a 3/3. Lulu gets +1 attack. Man, she's a 3/3 now. Lulu needed a lot in terms of her supports. We're gonna have to see further down if some of the support cards are better, but +1 attack is probably not gonna be super big on her. Like if anything, +1 health would have been really nice. Her being a 3/3, she still isn't gonna lead to like a super coherent game plan. We're gonna have to see like what else comes down. But I mean, she'll feel quite a bit better at least. Like I think Lulu, so Lulu, I do think has been an underrated card for a while. In a certain way. I don't think Lulu's good. I think Lulu has a problem with her like support archetype. The strong thing about Lulu, I think the thing about Lulu that people do kind of underestimate is that it's not an I've seen effect. You don't have to curve Lulu on 3. And her level up is actually pretty good. So if in theory, the support cards were a little bit better, and now that she has +1 attack, like she's closer to being okay than it might seem, but it comes down to the support cards being good. All right, pick a card. Twisted Fate's pick a card. Goes down to 2 mana. Okay, place a card from your hand and deck, draw 3. Place a card from your hand and deck into draw 2. So it's a draw 2 instead of a draw 3 at 2 mana. At 2 mana. And we can actually see, I'm just going to say on the screen now, we can see Burblefish is down 1 attack as well. So we can see these 3 nerfs to Twisted Fate overall. Twisted Fate above, he went to 9. 9 draws instead of 8. Pick a card. In Twisted Fate to pick a card, go to 2 cost to draw 2. I think I'm fine with that. These are pretty big nerfs overall. Like, I think these are fair nerfs overall. Like, pick a card. It is 2 mana now, and that, obviously in some cases will be an advantage, but in terms of at least being able to, like, level up TF, that will be a lot slower, and the Burblefish losing 1 attack does actually matter quite a bit. Like, TF will level notably slower now. Like, that is a big deal. It's important to realize, like, nerfing pick a card, so people have been saying for a while in the community that pick a card is kind of the only thing they have to nerf in that deck. The reason this nerf is a bit bigger than it looked, you have to remember, pick a card in TF Fizz, they run 6 pick a cards. They didn't just nerf pick a card, which that deck runs as a 3 of. They also nerfed Twisted Fate's pick a card. Like, it's so common for that deck to be on TF pick a card because it's his champ spell. And they nerfed both in this, right? Like, that will matter. Like, you will feel that. I'm pretty fine with these nerfs. I'm pretty fine with these nerfs. Drag Dredgers, back up to a 2-1, baby. Deep is back. Here we go. Overall, it was a little weird that they nerfed that in the first place so long ago. I'm happy with this. I don't think it's definitely not enough to return Deep to its former glory, though. That's not happening. But I mean, I like the fact that it's a 2-1 now. It's at least like, you know, it feels less just why, you know. Dreadway, 8 mana Dreadway. Okay. So yeah, there's a couple reasons they're doing this. I was saying that they could nerf the Dreadway to 8 mana. There was some Reddit post of people saying just like make Dreadway 8 mana, and they actually did it. So part of the reason they did it, and yeah, they're explaining it here, because the concurrent timelines Ledgerist into Dreadway will no longer be possible, which, you know, is fine. I'm fine with that. That's kind of like future-proofing it a little bit, because concurrent times Ledgerist Dreadway wasn't like strong right now, but it actually like with a couple more in a meta where Shadow Isles PNZ makes sense as a deck, it actually would have been strong. And that is like an anti-meta deck that remerges from time to time, right? I'm fine with this. So Dreadros is no longer possible. And in addition to that, they've kind of done like 2 things at once. They've also buffed Dreadway, right? Dreadway has always been this card. I've always loved Dreadway. Like, this card is like a scary combo piece kind of build around, but at 9 mana, it's always felt like that's such a big deal. This is such a big deal. At 8 mana, Dreadway can actually be a finisher. I swear to God, people have been sort of sleeping on Dreadway, kind of. I mean, it's been bad because it's been 9 mana, but you guys have to realize, like, the biggest reason that, like the Leviathan from Swain is, like, good and Dreadway is bad is just because one's 8 mana and one's 9 mana. It's like, guys, like, imagine if Leviathan was 9 mana. Like, that would be so much worse. And this is a big deal. Like, Dreadway might actually make sense as a card in decks now. I like this. This is a good change, and they've made it a 4/6 to kind of like compensate with that, make it a bit more killable, which I'm fine with. So yeah, there's some things that we can do with Dreadway, and I mean, you can still run Dreadway with Ledros. You can curve like Dreadway into Ledros. Some cool combos here, but we might see people building like Keg Control with Shadow Isles and Dreadway now. We might see people running like Dreadway Ezreal style decks. Like, that could be a thing. This card actually makes sense to run now. Shadow Assassin, it goes to a 2-1. Okay, so it was a 2-2 before, and now they've kind of like swapped its stats around. This is a buff for sure. The thing to understand is that health doesn't mean anything in Runeterra if you don't have attack. And like, an elusive with 1 attack is like useless. It might as well have no attack. And so like, having less health is kind of a downside, but in its current form, in its previous form, when that health was attached to 1 attack, it kind of didn't do anything anyway. So this is a buff. This is definitely a buff. It's able to like trade with Zap Spray for now. That feels good, you know? Like, you'll actually be able to run this in Ionic cards without feeling bad. Like, this is actually a good card now. Okay. Fey Guide, base stats 3-4. Okay, Fey Guide's still shit. Never run this card. Legion Rearguard. Okay, +1 health. Back to a 3-2. Alright. So, basically, it's a buff to aggro. Like, aggro decks can actually use Legion Rearguard. Like, that actually will make sense. There's a lot of aggro decks. Like, Pirate Burn, for example. Pirate Burn was kind of looking for a 4th 1-drop from Noxus. So you will actually be running Legion Rearguard in that kind of deck. Legion Rearguard will make sense in a couple of decks now. Yep. So a couple aggro decks can chuck that in. That's fine. Sea Scarab goes +1/+1. What? Are you kidding me? Okay. Sea Scarab is now a 2-mana 2/3 that grows into a 5/6? Yo, okay, that might do it, dude. That's actually kind of crazy. Like, Deep really, really likes this. And you can run this, like, even outside of decks that are, like, you don't even have to necessarily be a Deep deck, per se. There's a few, like, Maokai plus X decks, like, Suddens, like, Maokai Targon, or, like, you can try to, like, run some kind of, like, more solo Shadow Isles deck. But, like, there's definitely, like, potential here. This becomes a scary payoff card now. Like, this will just randomly grow in the mid game. Yeah, this card's crazy. Esteemed Hierophant. When I'm summoned, advance your Birds on disc 2 rounds. Now when I'm summoned, advance your Birds on disc 3 rounds. Alright, so the best versions of Mono Shurima, I think we're cutting Esteemed Hierophant before. And the question is, will they run it now? And I think the answer is no. So we can move on. Callous Bone Crusher goes to a 6/4. Callous Bone Crusher. Callous Bone Crusher. Ugh. Well, I mean, it is a 4-mana 6/4 now. Honestly, this card might actually make sense in like a LeBlanc Sivir now. This one actually matters. This one actually matters. Callous Bone Crusher getting +1 health actually does matter. Yeah, I think this card will actually be running LeBlanc Sivir now. Like, that 4th point of health matters a ton for this card. And, like, sometimes it'll be 2 mana, which is just, like, really, really crazy tempo. Aphelios. Oh! It's happened, guys. It's finally happened. This is it. The balance change of the century. Of fucking millennia. Aphelios weapons are all 3 mana. This is it. Alright. Aphelios players out of here. Gone. Oh, man. That feels good. That feels great. Aphelios, that's like that's the nerf we've needed to Aphelios for a while. It seems immediately the initial impression might be like, oh, that seems like a weird overnerf. If you guys think this was an overnerf, you didn't realize how strong Aphelios was in the first place. Guys, he's a 3-mana card that Nightfall draws you a card. And can draw you a card every turn based on what you need. Like, these weapons are literally stronger than a card draw in almost every case. Like, you'd almost always take the chosen weapon over drawing a card, guys. Aphelios was so ridiculous. This is the nerf he needed. And this is a big nerf. This is a big nerf. Like, I mean, I don't expect Aphelios to be, like, nuts anymore. Yeah, he'll probably be out of meta at least for a while. Like, it is the big nerf. And Gifts from Beyond goes to 1 mana. Okay, so that's how they're kind of balancing it. That makes sense. That actually, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Like, Gifts from Beyond, since it creates a 3-mana moon weapon, this is actually a good change. I like this change overall. Like, this is a fair balancing factor to it. A lot of the times we see Riot do these changes, which are like side grades, which are like, well, I want to buff this, but we can't make it too strong, so we gotta side grade it. And like above with Shyvana is a good example of that. But this one, this is a side grade that doesn't like invalidate the nerf. Like, this is still a big nerf. All right, Veiled Temple. Each round, the first time you play 2 other cards, you fill 2 mana, +1/+1. And now, first time you play 2 other cards, you fill 2 mana and Great Stronger. So +1/+0. Okay, so they just removed the health. So now Veiled Temple is only giving attack buffs. Between the Aphelios nerf and between the fact that this no longer gives health, I don't think Veiled Temple would be good anymore. You probably won't run it anymore. The health was pretty important to this. People were also running Veiled Temple in like Lee Syndex, and I think that will also go away. I mean, without the ability to give +1/+1, now that it's just +1/+0, it's quite a bit weaker. Like that, when you think about Veiled Temple in like Lee Syndex, when their stuff is just getting like, you know, random attack instead of attack and health, it is a good amount worse. You might still be able to run it in Lee Sin. I mean, getting the attack is a lot of what you needed in a lot of cases, but there are still a lot of cases in like Lee Sin where you get a Veiled Temple early and it bails out like weak hands that don't have Lee Sin, by like buffing stuff like Zoe or Sparklefly, and like, you know, that does matter a lot for that deck still. And that's it for the balance changes. Wow. Okay. So that's pretty surprising. I will have to go through like the rest of the notes, and I want to go through all the reasoning. We've got to read a lot about the labs too. Oh man, yeah, let me just read the labs right now. Wait, let me read the labs right now. A new rotation to multi-lab. So, Lab of Legends updated. Temporal Transducer, Rapid Draw. Lab of Legends has been upgraded. This is what I want to see. Okay, Lab of Legends upgraded. Talia and Azir have joined the Lab of Legends lineup, each with their own unlockable icon for completing a run. Difficulty tiers. So they added difficulties. Oh yes, baby. Complete a run on each difficulty tier to unlock the next run. So, they added difficulties. Now, I'm gonna have some fun with this. You guys know I do these stupid, I spend days of my life doing these like challenge modes on lab. The difficulties will give me a lot to play with now, because I'll be able to like mix and match and like make things harder as I see fit. We're not just gonna play on legendary, where like legendary will be too easy. I guarantee you guys that, but I will add some additional difficulties to legendary, and this gives me a lot more granularity in my challenge run, which is what I like. Okay. Don't like your rewards? Toss them out for a new batch. You have 3 rewards for each run, so use them to take care. Share glorious victories and painful defeats with new summaries at the end of a run. So, I was thinking, you know, I don't mind this. The summaries at the end of the run, I might be able to use this for like challenge, labs challenge as well. If there's like some metrics that we can like, you know, get low or get high. This is fine. I was hoping there would be like, you know, a whole new kind of campaign for Lab of Legends, because they did announce it was getting like a major update. They added difficulty tiers and they added like, you know, some of these like features, but it's not like a brand new campaign. So overall, still pretty good. Still very, very cool. I'm very happy about those. All right. And now just in terms of like a broad perspective on this balance patch, I like it overall. I mean, it's doing the important things, I think. Wait, Shurima didn't get much. Yeah, Shurima's still gonna be a little bit awkward. The biggest things though is they did nerf like a lot of the top stuff, a good amount of the top stuff at once, right? Like Aphelios decks are pretty trashed. Twisted Fate Fizz, I think Twisted Fate Fizz will survive in some capacity. It might be like a tier 2 deck. It did get like effectively quadruple nerfed, right? Like it was a good deck. It was like, you know, arguably tier 0. It got effectively quadruple nerfed. Like they nerfed Twisted Fate, they nerfed Twisted Fate's pick a card, they nerfed pick a card, and they nerfed the Burblefish, right? Overall, like I don't know if the deck will like it might be a similar thing to when they nerfed like Go Hard for TF Go Hard. I think the deck will largely disappear from ladder. Like it will probably still have a kind of decent win rate. TF Fizz, like I expect it'll be like somewhere in tier 2, although that's like fairly broad. Who knows? But yeah, I think it is no longer an issue in the same way, right? All right. So this is amazing. Talk about Kindred and Victor, Katarina, and Draven changes at the bottom. Ooh, is there more at the bottom? Oh, is it like bug fixes? Wait, Kindred. Kindred now correctly counts slayed units that were marked in previous rounds towards their level up progress. That's interesting. Huh. I mean, that's definitely not like a notable buff or anything like that. But that's interesting. Where are the others? Oh, Katarina, Victor, and Draven have had their play effects updated to be summon effects to be consistent with the other. Oh. So Katarina can now rally you on summon instead of on play. And there's a couple of cards in the game that's potentially useful for. There's a couple of cards in the game that we can use that for. It's like for some of the Shadow Isles cards, like, you know, Mist's Call and Chronicler, I guess. It's not going to be enough to make Katarina make sense. But, yeah, I mean, I guess there's summon effects now. Harrowing. Yeah, Katarina Harrowing. That is true. That is true. That Harrowing is the biggest one. Katarina Harrowing or Rekindler Katarina? Rekindler Katarina? Honestly, I mean, I can't rule it out. Like, Rekindler Katarina or Harrowing Katarina actually could have some potential. But you need to kill Katarina. Yeah, just kill Katarina, guys. It's that easy. So, overall, there's a thing. Lucky Find. Lucky Find will no longer trigger a second spell cast upon selecting one of the 3 choices. Right. So, as mentioned, and this was something I've been saying for a while, like a month now, the Lucky Find interaction is not... It's not something that is intended to be in the game long term. It is a bug fix. Basically, Lucky Find was triggering... Lucky Find and Payday. So Payday and Inner Sanctum. The 2 cards that were generating Lucky Finds were triggering an additional spell trigger that they shouldn't have been. It was a buggy interaction. And basically, they've resolved the bug by, in this case, removing the spellcast, right? So they've effectively made, you know, there was like the Lee Sin Shurima deck that could literally flip Lee Sin and kill you on turn 5 with the flip Lee Sin, which that was pretty funny. No longer will you be able to do that. This doesn't really have like, I think, any sort of competitive implications, but that's it. That's it. And they lowered the prismatic card's volume, the little like shine. Okay, perfect. Mimic bug. Oh, the bug where you could like clone a champion spell. Yeah, there were a lot of bugs that they fixed. Wait, did they fix the Braum crimson thingy bug? Crimson doggo thing. Bloodletter. Do I just search Bloodletter? I don't see it here. Cause currently like Braum Vlad, so there's a bug right now where Bloodletter, when you use it on Braum, will get like a double trigger, which is actually like a big deal. Like that interaction actually helps the Vlad Braum decks quite a bit, and they're actually pretty popular decks on ladder right now. Is that a bug? Yes. Yes, it's a bug, guys. All right, so they missed that one, which is good news for any Vlad players out there. Any Vlad players out there. Interesting. Okay, so this is an interesting patch, and there's going to be a lot to talk about. There's a lot more to talk about in terms of like meta stuff. This is a very, very, very interesting patch. So, initial impressions. What are things going to look like? Remember, we went through, you know, we detailed some of like what we expected to happen. They didn't end up buffing Talia, or they didn't really end up buffing Shurima. The one Shurima buff that happened that will actually change any decks at all was, I think the Callous Bone Crusher will be ran in Silver LeBlanc. Silver LeBlanc might actually be a decent deck. I think, you know, it'll probably be like a solid, like maybe it depends on how the meta settles, but I could actually see that deck being like a high tier 2 deck. The top decks getting nerfed is really helping it, and it should be decently well positioned. I think Callous Bone Crusher will actually feel pretty good in that deck. I think so. Ionia is still very bad. Yeah, Ionia, I don't have high expectations for some of these buffs. Like the Lulu buff, I don't think we can really do much with that. The one thing Ionia does have is Lee Sin. You guys might have noticed, unless I missed it, I don't think there was a nerf to like Lee Sin deck anywhere here. Yeah, I mean, it's possible they might, some of the like Veil Temple versions, you could consider that like a kind of nerf. But for the most part, Lee Sin is looking very well positioned to be Meta King again, and I don't think there was anything for Lysandre Trundle either, right? Woo. This means Lucian Azir is going to be very good as well. Lucian Azir is going to be very good as well. Very, very good. So if we look at how the position of the meta looks like right now, we've got Lee Sin hasn't gotten nerfed, and FizzTF, keep in mind, this was all part of the discussion I was having before we started, looking at the patch notes. Lee Sin was being held back by FizzTF. Lee Sin is going to be very, very, very good. Lucian Azir is going to be nuts. Lucian Azir has to be tier 1, because the third deck, Trundle Lysandre, will also be very good. Trundle Lysandre has to be in some form, and it might look like a couple different things, because there's so many different ways Trundle Lysandre can be built. But Trundle Lysandre will have to be a tier 1 deck as well. So we've got Lee Sin, Trundle Lysandre, and Azir Lucian. Those are the 3 decks that like immediately come to mind. I have to think about like more long-term meta ramifications. Lucian Azir, though, is gonna surprise people, because Lucian Azir eats Trundle Lysandre, and God, I don't know if it beats Lee Sin or not. I'm not 100% sure if it beats Lee Sin, but that'll be really important. Those 2 decks are gonna look pretty good. Oh, there will be some good Noxus aggro deck that will be like maybe top of tier 2, maybe running the new Legion Rearguard. Maybe it'll be like Pirate Burn or something. Like Pirate Burn's looking good. Nick was saying Spiders like Elise Noxus aggro could make a comeback, because like, you know, I've seen people playing that in like the last 2 weeks. That makes sense. So that could be here instead of the Pirate Burn. But I mean, Legion Rearguard is just, yeah, that will actually make a difference on the meta. Like, this card is pretty good now that it's a 3-2 again. Deep. Oh, yes. And the biggest question on everyone's mind, Deep. What's going to happen with Deep? That's a hard one. I mean, Deep won't be, like, back in the meta in, like, a major way. But, honestly, they're not bad. Like, an efficient Deep. Like, Deep is actually well positioned against some things. A good Deep deck might actually beat Lysandre Trundle. Like, Dreg Dredges getting buffed actually matters. Dreg Dredges getting buffed actually matters. Sea Scarab getting buffed actually matters. So Deep is looking pretty good right now. Deep is looking pretty good right now. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this patch. This is a pretty good patch. It addresses, like, a lot. I wouldn't have expected more than this. Like, Aphelios gets a big nerf, not like a little, like, tiny slap on the wrist, like when he got, like, -1 health. That was pretty funny. Yeah, Aphelios gets like an actual nerf, like a well-sized nerf. Twisted Fate gets, I think, a pretty fair nerf. I think I'm fine with this. He will be a lot harder to level up now, and nerfing like kind of equally a lot of the incidental cards, I think, is a good way to go about it. Like, I'm happy with that change. The buffs to Shyvana and Lulu are, I think, going to end up, you know, completely inconsequential in this case. Dreadway could spur on a new archetype or two. This is actually a really interesting one, honestly. Wait, Shadow, I could bring Encroaching Shadows back off of Shadow Assassin buff. Shadow Assassin buff, Encroaching Shadows, anyone? That could actually make something out of this. That's, I think, the one thing where Shadow Assassin buff could actually make a change. Back to Encroaching Shadows, basically. Back to Ionia elusives. That's it. 100%. And then, yeah, as mentioned, you know, the Sea Scarab change is big for Deep. Steam Terrafin doesn't matter to anyone. And that's the end of the patch notes. So, for the most part, I'm pretty happy about this. I do wish, you know, there was a couple more Shurima nerfs, because, I mean, Shurima's still gonna feel pretty bad. Like, Shurima wasn't just kept down by, like, the best decks. Shurima also just, like, wasn't really that good. Like, the new best decks are still going to keep Shurima down, right? Shurima nerfs? Oh, yeah, buffs. Sorry, I meant buffs. They were close enough, honestly, guys. The best new decks are still going to keep Shurima down. But, I mean, we're getting the, like, second half of Shurima in, like, a month anyway, so I'm sure it'll be fine then. At the end of the day, the nerfs, I think, were pretty good. I do think there aren't really, like, a ton of, like, new buffs. And without that, I think it will be, like, the meta should be pretty predictable in this case. Like, it will be a Lee Sin, Lissandra Trundle, and, honestly, Lucian Azir. I think Lucian Azir is stonks. I might be wrong about that, but I think Lucian Azir is stonks. But those are the three decks on my radar right now. Without buffs, metas tend to be, like, more predictable based on just the nerfs alone. But the nerfs were good in this case. They did come in big and, like, in a significant way, actually reduce the top stuff. Fiora Shen's still good. Fiora Shen might still be good, as well. I think, like, Demacia will be good. That's an important takeaway. Demacia is well positioned. Fiora Shen is a hard deck to kill, and I think Fiora Shen can definitely survive this. Like, they'll feel this nerf. Like, they'll feel this a lot. It will just, like, Fiora will sometimes, like, tax out a spell. The difference between 3 and 2 health on turn 3 is huge, man. Like, that will affect, like, every game. But Fiora Shen will still be a decent deck, I think. So, yeah, I don't think Fiora Shen's necessarily going anywhere, but they'll feel this one. Okay. So, yeah, that's another thing I should point out. Demacia is well positioned. Fiora Shen could end up staying tier 1 because the other tier 1 decks are coming down. All right. And yeah, that's kind of the general summary. Jarvan might possibly surprise us, but I'm not holding out hope. So that's my initial impressions. There's still so much to talk about here. There's still so much to talk about because we have to talk about, like, all the long-term meta implications. When we think about it more, there will be some surprising, like, predictions that we'll be able to make in terms of new decks that are good, that are just well positioned against, like, the, you know, what will be kind of the new top decks here. But things are taking a turn. Things are definitely shifting in a really, really major way. A really, really major way. So I'm happy about this, and in conjunction with the new Shurima cards next month, there'll be a lot more meta diversity. This was like a good setup patch for the expansion. Whew. All right, guys. What do you guys think? What did I miss? Are there big meta takes that you guys have here?